Have you ever looked at your bank account, maybe after paying just a massive pile of bills, or just stared at an empty pocket and wondered, where does wealth actually come from?
It's a heavy question, and probably one we try to avoid thinking about too much.
Right, exactly. And I don't mean where your paycheck comes from or, how to invest in the stock market. I mean the foundational bedrock origin of the concept of wealth itself. Welcome back. I am thrilled you're joining us for another deep dive today.
It's great to be here. We are going into some incredibly fascinating territory today.
We really are. We've got a wildly paradigm shifting topic lined up for you. We are looking at a translated audio excerpt from a deeply philosophical narrator.
A thinker who basically takes us on a journey to explore the true origins of money and prosperity.
Yeah. And our mission today is to unpack a 5,000-year-old mystery about where wealth actually originates. We're moving all the way from a child's empty pockets to the boundless, blazing energy of the sun. Okay, let's unpack this, because it completely flips the script on how we view the money we use every single day.
It really does challenge the fundamental assumptions we just sort of carry around with us. To
Mhm.
fully appreciate this source, we need to frame it not just as an economic text, but as a profound philosophical journey.
Yeah, it's definitely not a textbook.
No, not at all. We're looking at one visionary's unique perspective on the entirety of human civilization. It's this lens that attempts to synthesize biology, economics, and astrophysics into a unified theory of human interaction.
Which sounds huge, but
It is huge, but what makes it so compelling is that it doesn't start in a university lecture hall or some corporate boardroom. It starts from a very vulnerable, universal human experience.
yeah, the origin story of this whole philosophy begins with a kid who just wanted to buy something.
Exactly.
The narrator shares this vivid childhood memory of having absolutely no money. His pockets were just completely empty. He couldn't buy anything. And he felt this deep, profound sense of trouble and frustration.
I think we can all relate to that on some level.
Oh, 100%. That feeling of wanting to participate in the world, to exchange, to have something, but lacking the token to do it. And for this narrator, that childhood frustration didn't just, fade away as he grew up. It sparked a lifelong obsession with a beautifully basic question.
Where does wealth actually come from?
Right. And the darkest part of that childhood logic is the assumption it immediately leads to.
Yes. The narrator explains his early thought process, which goes something like this. If I gain wealth, does that inherently mean the person giving it to me or someone else in the world is losing it?
It feels like this giant, inescapable game of taking and losing.
The classic zero-sum game.
Yeah, the idea that the pie is only so big, and if I manage to get a bigger slice, you automatically have to get a smaller one. It's a terrifying way to look at the world when you're a kid with an empty pocket.
It really is.
It makes the acquisition of wealth feel inherently selfish, almost like a form of theft, because your gain requires someone else's loss. But why is that assumption so deeply ingrained in us? It feels like we are almost hardwired to think that way.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, for practically the entirety of human civilization, we're talking roughly 5,000 years of recorded history. Humanity has largely operated under this exact zero-sum belief.
Wow. 5,000 years.
Yeah, we've built empires, fought brutal wars, and structured our entire global society around the terrifying premise that wealth is a strictly limited pool of resources. If you look at historical conflicts over land, over gold, over spices, or oil,
They're all symptoms of that anxiety.
exactly, they are all symptoms of this underlying anxiety. The assumption is that we are all locked in a closed room fighting over a finite number of crumbs. The narrator recognizes the immense emotional and historical weight of this assumption. He sees that this isn't just a childhood worry. It is the engine of human conflict.
It's exhausting just thinking about it. A 5,000-year tug of war where everyone is just terrified of running out.
It's a bleak view.
But the narrator doesn't just accept this gloomy reality. He comes up with a really unusual methodology for solving this wealth mystery. He figures, okay, what is the most fundamental thing we trade wealth for?
Load.
Food. We trade money for food to survive. So he looks at food. But how does he get from eating a sandwich to understanding infinite wealth?
Yeah.
What's the biological leap there?
He moves the question from the abstract realm of economics into the tangible realm of biology and physics. He asks a very simple yet profound question. Organisms have been eating on this planet for eons, millions and millions of years,
Right.
and yet the food has never run out. If wealth is finite and food represents wealth, shouldn't the earth have been eaten barren millennia ago? Why is the pantry always restocked?
Okay, we all know how the carbon cycle works on a basic level. We
Right.
eat food, we metabolize it, we exhale carbon dioxide, and plants use the sun to turn that CO2 back into food. We learned that in grade school.
Yes, basic biology.
But the narrator looks at this basic biology and asks a brilliant economic question. If the matter's just being recycled, what are we actually paying for?
That is the pivotal question.
Right.
Because the carbon itself isn't new. The carbon atom in the apple you just bought could have been exhaled by a dinosaur or a Victorian monarch or your neighbor yesterday.
That's a funny image, but true.
It is a perfectly closed loop of material recycling.
Hmm.
So when you hand over $1 for that apple, you aren't paying for the carbon atoms. Those are ancient and constantly reused. Earth's gravity traps this CO2, preventing it from escaping, and the plants just keep recycling it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if the physical matter isn't new, there has to be something else in that transaction. What is the newly introduced element that gives the apple its value? What is actually new?
That is the great epiphany that the narrator says he realized 49 years ago.
Yeah.
When you look at that recycled carbon, the only truly new thing that has been introduced into the system is the new energy infused into those carbon bonds to hold them together as an apple or a grain of wheat.
The end.
Yes. And where did that energy come from? It didn't come from the carbon itself. It didn't come from the farmer, really. Therefore, he concludes, wealth, in its truest, most fundamental form, is nothing more than energy.
Wealth is energy. It's a massive concept. But this brings us to a term in the translation that might confuse people. He calls this the MIT theory.
Right, we should clarify that.
Yeah, just to clarify for everyone listening, in the context of this translated text, that does not stand for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It seems to be an acronym or a quirk of the translation for what he ultimately dubs the wealth provider theory.
That's a vital distinction. The wealth provider theory is the core of his argument, because if wealth is simply energy, then the provider of that wealth, the source of the money in your pocket, ultimately, isn't your boss. It isn't the government. It isn't even human.
It's something else entirely.
This introduces what he calls the third party.
The third party. Okay, so if we look at the zero-sum game again, person A trading with person B, it looks like a closed loop of taking and giving. I give you $1, you give me an apple.
But the wealth provider theory reveals a massive, glowing third party hovering right above that transaction, a non-human, non-Earth entity, specifically the sun.
The sun, I mean, on a physical level, it checks out. The sun is beaming down the radiation, the energy that powers the photosynthesis, that structures the recycled carbon, that creates the food, that sustains our lives and our labor, which we then trade as wealth.
Precisely.
The sun is essentially the ultimate central bank.
What's fascinating here is how completely this fractures the zero-sum illusion. By introducing this cosmic third party into the equation, the entire dynamic of human existence changes.
It's a total paradigm shift.
We are no longer two people trapped in a room stealing scraps off each other's limited plates. We are all standing under a limitless waterfall of continuous, infinite energy pouring in from the cosmos. Humanity is not doomed to fight over resources. The system is actually designed for a win-win co-prosperity.
I love the optimism of that and how elegant this non-human system is, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. If I go to my landlord at the end of the month, I can't hand him a jar of sunshine and say, here's my rent, the universe provides.
No, you definitely cannot do that.
Right? So how does the narrator reconcile this cosmic infinite energy idea with the harsh reality of modern bills and empty bank accounts?
It's a fair pushback. And the narrator isn't suggesting we can literally pay rent with sunlight just yet. The point he is making is about the fundamental architecture of value. Money, in his view, is just a symbolic token representing captured solar energy.
Okay, captured energy.
Your landlord wants rent because your landlord needs to buy things. Food, shelter, services, all of which require energy to produce. You pay him with money you earn from your labor, which was fueled by the food you ate, which was grown by the sun.
So it's a chain.
A chain of energy transfer, yes. The disconnect happens because we have mistaken the symbolic tokens, the dollars, for the actual wealth. We fight over the paper tokens while ignoring the infinite energy source, printing the real value.
So the anxiety comes from our obsession with the symbol rather than the source. We think the paper is limited, so we panic even though the energy backing the paper is infinite.
You've nailed it. The narrator points out that because of this third party, the underlying system of reality isn't designed for endless competition and theft. The energy just keeps coming. It's an infinite supply. We just have to capture it and share it.
Which shifts our understanding from an economic dimension to an energy dimension.
Exactly. He urges us to ascend from what he calls an economic dimension, where everything is measured in man-made currencies and artificial scarcities, to an energy dimension of understanding.
When you view wealth from the energy dimension, you see that the universe is inherently abundant, not scarce. But, as the source points out with a lot of sadness, this isn't how we actually live.
No, unfortunately.
The narrator laments this tragic lack of understanding throughout human history. Because humanity has been entirely disconnected from this energy dimension theory for so long, we've essentially tortured ourselves. We have faced endless economic struggles, massive political turmoil, and just ceaseless conflict.
We fight because we think we have to. We fight because we don't realize the sun is constantly paying all our bills. And if the sun is paying our bills, it really makes you wonder why we spend so much time arguing over taxes and resource allocation and rival economies.
The narrator actually takes a pretty hard swing at our political systems because of this, right?
He does. And it's important to state clearly here that we're impartially reporting the source's worldview. We aren't endorsing it, but we want to explore his architecture of ideas.
Right. Our purpose is just to unpack this fascinating idea.
His argument is that if humanity were to accept the wealth provider theory, this MIT theory, as absolute truth, we would no longer need any divisive political isms to split ourselves apart.
By isms, he's talking about things like capitalism, socialism, communism, all the ideological frameworks we use to divide ourselves into tribes and argue over how to distribute a supposedly limited pie.
His argument is that all of these political systems, regardless of where they fall on the spectrum, share one foundational flaw.
Which is?
They're merely different strategies for managing scarcity. There are different rule books for playing the zero-sum game. Under capitalism, the market manages the scarcity. Under socialism, the state manages the scarcity. But if the game isn't zero-sum, if wealth is actually infinite solar energy, then the fundamental premise of all these isms just collapses.
That is a wild thought experiment. He's suggesting that by embracing the universal energy theory, humanity can bypass these tribal political divisions entirely. We can replace ideological conflict with a unified understanding of our place in the cosmic energy cycle.
It's a fascinating proposition, leaving it entirely up to you, the listener, to decide its practical merits and how it might actually translate into human behavior. Imagine a political debate where instead of arguing about tax brackets, the politicians are just talking about maximizing solar capture efficiency to enrich everyone simultaneously.
That would be a refreshing debate to watch. The narrator really leans into how bizarre our current system must look from the outside. He brings up this quirky, really memorable conclusion. He says, Earthlings are seen as pitiful.
Pitiful because we are trapped in these self-destructive, entirely unnecessary economic loops. We have infinite wealth raining down on our heads every single day, and we are down on the ground fighting in the mud over pennies.
He jokes, or maybe he's completely serious, given the earnest tone of the text, that humanity is so lost in the weeds that it basically requires an alien perspective to hand us the correct theory of wealth.
An alien perspective.
Yeah. We are too close to the problem. We're so stressed about our mortgages and our grocery bills that we need an extraterrestrial intervention, or at least an extraterrestrial level of objectivity to look at us and say, hey, look up, the big yellow thing in the sky is doing all the work. Stop fighting.
Whether taken literally or as a rhetorical device, this alien perspective perfectly encapsulates his point. It underscores the ultimate goal of the wealth provider theory.
Which is world peace and continuous economic prosperity.
Yes. Moving past our terrestrial squabbles to achieve that peace, it's a deeply hopeful vision. It asserts that human suffering rooted in poverty and resource wars is not a tragic inevitability of nature. It's simply a misunderstanding of physics.
So what does this all mean? We started with a little kid who was heartbroken over an empty pocket, feeling the crush of what he thought was a zero-sum world. And we followed his logic through the carbon cycle, past the food on our plates, past our modern anxieties about bills and rent, all the way out into the cosmos.
It's quite a journey.
We realized that wealth is not a human tug of war. It is an infinite stream of cosmic energy, freely provided by a third party, our sun.
And that brings it right back down to you, the listener. How does viewing your own paycheck or your daily expenses through this lens change things?
It definitely changes my perspective.
If you reframe your money not as a piece of a shrinking pie that you have to claw away from someone else, but as a symbolic token of captured solar energy, it fundamentally alters your relationship with scarcity.
Hmm.
It reframes the stress of daily survival into an acknowledgement of cosmic abundance.
It makes paying for groceries feel a little more majestic, honestly. You're not just buying a bag of apples, you're trading tokens for condensed starlight. It completely removes the guilt of acquiring wealth because you aren't taking that starlight away from anyone else. There's plenty to go around.
And here is a thought to take with you, something that builds on this narrator's profound realization, but looks toward our immediate future.
I'd love to hear it.
If wealth is fundamentally just energy derived from cosmic sources like the sun,
Well,
how might our rapid technological leaps in energy capture completely obsolete the concept of human poverty in our lifetime?
oh, wow.
Think about it. We are on the cusp of mastering artificial photosynthesis, nuclear fusion, and incredibly advanced globally linked solar grids managed by AI. If we reach a point where energy becomes truly limitless, perfectly efficient, and essentially free to capture, will we finally have to rewrite the dictionary definition of money entirely? If the energy dimension becomes fully realized through our technology, the economic dimension as we know it might just vanish.
Now, that is something to chew on, a world where money itself becomes a relic of the past because we finally figured out how to plug directly into the universe's infinite battery.
It's a future worth working toward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. It's conversations like this that remind us to look past the surface of our daily routines and keep questioning the reality of the world around us. We hope you leave today feeling a little less stressed about the empty pockets and a little more connected to the abundance above us. Until next time, keep exploring.